But for those of us who've done this, we've managed this, we get up every single day and we struggle with three things: fear, obligation, and guilt. We go around in a fog, which leads to heartache, anger, and turmoil. Fog hat, because I like 70s music. Spell it out. Wow. How many people lived in the 70s? You know, okay, I just want to make sure. Whew, man.
I don't remember.
You know, Victor doesn't remember. Oh yeah, and you run a healthcare thing, okay? I know that. What kind of thing is you peddling over there, Victor? All right, so this is where we live. All right, now look, go back to JFK Jr. Y'all remember that? It was a tragic story. What was he doing? He's flying a small plane, but was he instrument rated?
No.
And so he was going to use what to guide him?
The horizon.
The horizon, the lights of Martha's Vineyard, or wherever he was going over there.
Right.
And he flew right into the ocean and took his loved ones with him because he trusted his own understanding. Now there's a scripture about trusting your own understanding, isn't there? It's in Proverbs. It says, anybody know it? Lean not on your own understanding. There's, every time you see something in scripture, there's a reason they put it there. Lean not on your own understanding. And yet when it comes to being a caregiver, that's exactly what we do. Why? Because caregivers suffer from the three I's. We lose our independence, we lose our identity, and we become isolated. Now think about the people in your church. If they've got somebody with cerebral palsy who's got a lot of spasticity and so forth, do they feel comfortable coming into your church? And if not, where are they going? So if they're at 3 o'clock in the morning, you're up dealing with pretty rough stuff. You're going to feel like going to church the next day, or the next time, or the next time. And all of a sudden you become isolated. In that isolation, you start operating in a fog. You start making decisions based in your own mind. And it makes sense to you. I can promise you, JFK Jr. did not think he was taking his family down to doom. But that's exactly what he did. Now, into that situation, how do we minister to these people? How do we help them? Do we go in there and just give them a bunch of advice? Do you all know what to say to a caregiver? Do you know what to say to me? I've taken care of a woman who has not known a day without pain since Reagan's first term. Do you know what to say to somebody who watches that level of suffering? See, we caregivers put ourselves between a vulnerable loved one who suffers and disaster, and we get up and do it every single day. And there's usually not an expiration date. No, I'm not talking about a short-term thing where we've all had short-term crises. I mean, kids broken their leg at the soccer field or whatever. There's always something. Even some bad diagnosis, but we know they're temporary. We're going to get surgery. It's going to get fixed. It's going to move on. That's not what I'm talking about. I had a guy come up to me at church one Sunday. He came up to me at church one Sunday and he said, I know exactly what you're going through, man. I heard your story and I know exactly what you're going through. And I said, wow, man, really? I'm sorry to hear that. And he said, yeah, my wife broke her ankle last month. And I looked at him, and because I was raised in the South, I said, bless your heart. And then I kind of backed away because I wasn't sure I wanted that on me, and I thought, that's not what I'm talking about, short-term stuff. I'm talking about stuff that it doesn't end. There's no expiration date. And we got people in our communities, in our families, who want to be in our churches, and maybe they even make it to church. But they're sitting there wondering, where is this victory? Where is this abundant life? Where is God in this thing? And then they go to work and they do this, and they're trying to maintain a workload while doing this. And they're having to switch out schedules. Of those 30-something million people in the workforce, if you are living with someone and taking care of them, you're going to spend average on 40 hours a week, 39.7 hours. I'm going to see if I can remember all my notes here. Watch and see how I do. Well, y'all can't. I'll just make this stuff up. Y'all wouldn't know that. Wow, that sounds good. But they're going to spend 39.7 hours per week taking care of that person if they're living with them. If they're not living with them, it's about half of that, 20 hours a week. In addition to working. If they're taking care of a child with special needs, it's 29.7 hours. Now, does that affect the workplace, you all, I think? How do you deal with this and maintain the integrity of the workforce when people are swapping schedules? Do you know there was a thing that was costing like the average cost to businesses in this country alone of this related caregiving incidents is like anywhere from 17 to 30 billion dollars. They can't really narrow it down because nobody's really done the research because this is all happening so fast here. We're in the billions though. We got 70% are swapping schedules and absenteeism and so forth is a huge problem. And it affects every occupation. There is not one occupation that is immune to this. Pastors, surgeons, lawyers, servers. One day I was talking to a lady who was serving us at Cracker Barrel, and she was taking her husband to the doctor that afternoon. He was going to have to lose his leg due to diabetes. And then I was talking to a senator's family going through something. I mean, it's just, it's everywhere. And it affects every occupation. You got pastors up there in the pulpit who are trying to do this while their wives are taking care of aging parents, and their relationships are having all kinds of problems in their own relationship, and he's having to go out there and pastor to a church. It's happening everywhere. I see it all the time. And they don't know what to say. They don't even know what to pray. How do you pray for a caregiver? What do you pray for? If you go, people come to me and say, well, brother, we're going to pray for you. Okay. You're going to go to the King of Kings, Lord of Lords, the great I am, Jehovah Jireh, and you're going to ask him what? On our behalf. And then you're going to expect what? And then you want me to do what with that information? Do you see how glib that sounds to somebody who watches his wife go into a seizure, who watches her wife give up her legs, who watches her wife fall and break down into sobs because she's struggling to get back up again, and you're going to pray for me. Thank you. What do you want me to do with that? It's like going to the post office and you're carrying a bunch of boxes and somebody comes up, brother, you look to be burdened down. I'm going to pray for you. Well, hold the door. Why you do it? All of a sudden, we can change the way we minister to people just by a few little things and realize, let's don't speak glibly into it. Anybody ever read the book of Job? Yeah. You like it? It's pretty gripping reading. It's a real fun book to read, isn't it? The first 3 chapters of it basically get the setup. But have you ever noticed, by the way, people tell you, oh, I believe the Bible. Oh, I believe the Bible. They say that until they read it. Then there's something, they say, whoa, God made a bet with Satan. Anybody want to dispute that? And who was the ante? Job was the ante. And his family and his business. All because Satan said, and there it is. It's in black and white. I didn't write it. There it is. And Satan said, oh, God said, have you considered my servant Job? Yeah, okay, take it. And then they took his health. And his friends showed up, and what did they do? What did they do when they first showed up?
Real support.
They told him that it was his attitude that brought it all upon, or something to that nature.
They did. What did they do first? They sat there for 7 days and said nothing. And then if you'll notice, the next 30-something chapters are when the wheels came off because they all started weighing in with their opinion. And their opinion was irrelevant. And at the end, what does God say about their opinion? Does anybody know what he said? He said, go and ask Job to pray for you guys lest I do this to you. Am I right? Did I get it wrong? Now, how does that match up with our theology today? See, the wheels came off when they started trying to speculate on why this was coming Job's way. Had no idea. Job never knew why it happened. People have come up all the time, well, the Lord must have some real purpose, or Gracie wouldn't be here. Thank you, Captain Obvious. What do you want me to do with that information? Does that make you feel better to share that to me as I am helping my crippled wife into church? Really? Do we have to say something stupid? Can we just not say something at all? Mark Twain used to say, sometimes it's okay to be silent and be thought a fool than to open your mouth and remove all doubt. Sometimes when people are suffering and their hurt is so great, it's okay for us to just be silent and be there. Y'all know Stephen Ministers? Ever heard of Stephen Ministers? It's a great group of people. Just learn how to just go and be with people who are suffering. And I was speaking to a group one time, and I said, here's my call to action for Stephen Ministers. Suit up. Suit up. When we suit up as Christians, what are we suiting up in? And more specifically, the righteousness of Christ. We're putting on Christ. We put on the righteousness of Christ. I was in a hospital one time with Gracie, and she went into a seizure at 2 o'clock in the morning, just puking everywhere. I mean, I'm sorry, we just had breakfast, but this is what caregivers do. We talk about things like this. If you can change a dressing while cooking turkey with dressing. Okay. So it was, and I don't know if anybody's ever watched somebody go into a seizure. It is a horrific experience. And you feel so helpless. So here's my beautiful wife. I hadn't slept in 3 days. I was a young man, and I'm watching this unfold, and it's just god-awful. And the nurses came in, it took 3 of them and myself to hold her into the bed so she wouldn't fall out and hurt herself. And she just puked everywhere. It was on all of us. And I watched the nurses afterwards. They cleaned their uniforms up, and they cleaned the room up and went back to work. They didn't worry about it getting on them because they were dressed for the job. Are we dressed for the job? It's not going to get on us if we're wearing Christ. The only stain that we worry about is the stain of that blood that was shed for us. Everything else, it's impervious to anything else. No matter how gross it is, it's okay if we're wearing Christ. It's not going to get on us. Some people are kind of worried, oh God, I don't want to touch that. Man, I'm going to tell you something. That's the beautiful thing about our Savior is he did touch it. Not only did he touch it, he became it. I was in Africa one time, and I was going around the room welcoming we had all these people in this room when first times we got there, and all these amputees in the room, and I'm going around like a politician. I know that shocks y'all. And I'm shaking everybody's hand and welcoming everybody's hands, and then I had my hand stuck out like this because there's one lady in the corner right there, and I had my hand already out there, and I turned, I'm like Bill Clinton out there, yeah, y'all doing great, see y'all. And I turned over, and she had her hand stuck out, but she was missing these fingers. Her right leg was gone. She was all scarred up because she had leprosy. How many of y'all touched somebody with leprosy? You know how time can just stop, when you're doing something like that, and you just, and I'm seeing that hand, I'm seeing my hand's already out there, and I think, okay, I got to commit to this. I got to go. And I realized that's what he did for me. That is what he reached into my diseased, maimed world. And he not only welcomed me into the clinic, he welcomed me into his family. It's not going to get on me. And when we reach into the misery and the heartache of people's lives, it's not going to get on us because we are covered in Christ's righteousness. So, by the way, how am I doing on time?
Got a couple more hours.
Couple more hours. Oh, we have a church now, aren't we? I won't take up an offering. Man, I mean, so.
You're doing good to get your hat back.
That was funny. See, that's how you laugh at somebody's jokes. Even if it wasn't really that good, I still gave him a mercy laugh. That was actually funny, Gary. All right, so when I was talking to the Stevens minister, I said, suit up, put on the righteousness of Christ, show up. Just show up. Show up. Job's friends didn't screw it up until they did what? Opened their mouth. Always take a bottle of water with you when you go to minister to somebody. That way you could put something else in your mouth besides words.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That's not even funny. That's just brilliant. That's one of those moments where y'all need to go, So, no, think about it, because it's just put water in your mouth instead of words. Always put your hand over your mouth before you say anything, because when you see somebody suffering, when we're confronted with suffering, it makes us nervous. It is an unsettling thing to look at brutal realities. I've got a brother with a daughter who's got cerebral palsy. She's like a 2-year-old. She's 26 years old. 2 guys in the same family, more than 50 years of caregiving experience. It is a difficult thing to watch this and have to deal with it. But my niece is fine. She's fine. But everybody wants to come and pray for Kelsey to get healed and do all this stuff. And my brother said, she's loved, she's fed, she's clothed, she's got a great family. They're the ones that need the help and the prayer because they are worn slam out. But she's okay. But when we're confronted with things that are unsettling to us, it causes us to question our theology and our faith, and we start wanting to figure, well, why would God allow this? I remember Gracie was in traction, man. The story was, I wasn't there at the time, and if I had been, I'd probably hit somebody. The lady came in, and Gracie's in traction. She's 17 years old, laying there, legs all busted up. I mean, she looked awful. And a lady that knew her, and Gracie was a good woman. My wife is a good woman. Corrie ten Boom led my wife to the Lord. Wow. I mean, that doesn't make her good. She's an extraordinary woman. Do y'all know who Corrie ten Boom is? Yeah. And this is an extraordinary woman. And this lady walked into Gracie's hospital room. She's sitting there in traction. She can't move, jaws wired shut, legs all up in traction. Well, what did you do that God would do this to you?
Oh, wow.
It happened. And it happens every day. And people who are just struggling under the heartache of this thing, then they get the added heartache of stupid comments like that does not reflect Christ. Suit up, show up, shut up. Suit up, show up, shut up. That's what we do as believers. And that's how we help some people. We just be. We don't have to figure this out. We just don't have to figure this stuff out. And anybody who tells you that they do will lie about other things too. We just don't. So how does it affect you in the workplace? When you got people that are coming in there and they're struggling and they're trying to shift schedules around, or they're clients of yours and you're dealing with this and so forth, and you want to say something, you want to do something, you want to be helpful, what do? How do you help somebody like this?
Ask them what they need.
Maybe.
Be flexible.
Maybe. Blessed are the flexible, for they shall not be bent out of shape. Y'all can use that one. Oh, now y'all get excited about that. I came up with a little bumper sticker for you now. I know my audience. So, how do you help? A friend of mine's a deacon at a church over in Laverne, Tennessee, and he called me up and said, we're going to take on this family in our community. This guy's had some kind of traumatic brain injury or something going on with him. And it's been going on for about 5 years, and his wife's a school teacher. They have 2 small children. And we're going to take them on, and we're going to go over there and cook meals and clean their house and do all this stuff. You know, we got, in the South, man, something happens, we're going to, where 2 or 3 are gathered, there is a casserole. You know, we know what to do with short-term stuff. We're going to bring food. We're going to do these things. And he told me what they were going to do, and I said, no. He said, what do you mean no? I said, no. Why are you taking meals over to this family like this? You're going to sign up for regular meals. You're going to do this. I said, she can cook. He said, well, she's got 2 children, and her husband's disabled, and she works. And I said, hello. Been there, done that, got the T-shirt. I'm doing that. Why are you doing it? He said, well, what do you do? I said, look, you're going to try to take meals over to this family. How long before it just descends into somebody just bringing over Domino's? And she's coming home, she's got the kids at the table, and they're waiting on somebody in the church to bring another tuna noodle casserole. For first 3 weeks, I can plan this out. Y'all going to bring over really nice meals. It's going to be in picnic baskets. It's going to look like it's catered. It's going to be just beautiful. And then it's going to be Kentucky Fried Chicken 3 weeks later. It's going to happen. Or somebody's going to forget. Something's going to happen. That's not how you do this. That's not sustainable. It's been going on for 5 years. I was at a church speaking one time, and the lady said, and I said, how would you help me? And she said, well, I could come to clean your house. And I said, well, that's a very generous offer. Thank you. This has been going on for more than a quarter of a century. You ready for that level of commitment? And she said, well, I didn't think about that. I said, well, take a moment. That's the reality of a caregiver. And so he said, what should we do? And I said, how about instead of cooking her meals, just making sure her pantry's stocked? She can cook, and that way she's not dependent on people getting in business. Instead of cleaning her house, maybe send a service. That way you're not up in her business all the time, and you keep good boundaries. But as a requirement, if she's willing to do this, then she's got to at least, if she can't afford it, then you guys will work with her to make sure she is visiting with a CPA and a financial planner twice a year. to make sure budgets are being met, that she has proper life insurance, that she has proper financial planning, and so forth, to make sure that you're helping the whole person. You don't just help them physically, you help them fiscally. I find it, anybody here sell life insurance? Are you ready for, this is going to change your life. Tim said it. How do you call yourself a caregiver if you don't have life insurance? If I died today and I didn't have life insurance, how would my wife's life become just immeasurably harder? Because I've taken away finances and a caregiver. We have to think beyond our own grave. This is how you help them. You have to start thinking way down the road here, and you develop a plan of sustainability. That's how you do it. So when you're in the workforce, you've got the sustainability of the workforce, because you know what? I'm not there to run a mission. I'm not there to run a business. And I have other people that are counting on me to do this. I have my own family, and I have to make good, responsible decisions. So how do you do this? How do you help somebody like this? They're coming to work every day. They're struggling under this thing. Okay, it's 3 things. CPR. Ready? You can write that. And by the way, if you want all this information, and you can test my stats, I posted it on my blog this morning before I left. And you can text the word CARE to this number. You can write this down, 64895. Just to let y'all know that I can. Don't let the looks fool you. I know I'm from South Carolina, but hey, I got something going on up here. Oh, come on.
Yeah.
Did y'all ever see that movie, Radio?
Yeah.
That's my high school. I went to school with Radio. Radio and I went to 11th grade together. I have 4 brothers and a sister. All of us went to school with Radio. We were all in 11th grade with Radio. And it wasn't quite as inspirational when I was there, though. See, I grew up in a poor family. My dad was a minister of a little country church, and you know how some people were poor and they don't know it? We were poor, we were sure of it. And, we were Army brats, Salvation Army brats. And, and so I'm over there eating school lunch, and I'm one of the few people that enjoyed eating it. Radio come up and said, "You go eat that cheeseburger, white boy?" And I said, "Yes, Radio, I want to eat this cheeseburger. Get away from me." I didn't know he was going to be a big inspirational movie star later on down the road. Maybe I would have given him a cheeseburger, but he wouldn't remember it anyway. But it was, that was my life growing up in South Carolina. Just a little side note that I thought was quite amusing. Clearly, I stand alone. But text the word CARE, C-A-R-E, to 64895. And you'll get a text message from WLAC, and it'll send you a link to my latest blog post, and you can see these things on there on what this is, a CPR. And you can look at this and check my stats a little later on if you want. CPR. All right, this is for employers, and in the little bit of time I have left, Tim, tell me how much more time do I have? Okay, thank you. I didn't want to go over here. But when my dad preached, one time the officers of the church took down the clock in the back and put a calendar up. But CPR for businesses. And this is what I was trying to think. How do you help somebody in a business situation that's doing this? All right, C, communication. Very simple. When you have employee meetings, and everybody goes to them unless you're just running your own show there, but you're having a meeting with yourself. But you can also be a source of encouragement to other businesses that you work with clients and so forth. You remember this. CPR, it doesn't cost anything. Have employee meetings and just tell everybody, we recognize that this is a problem for so many families out there. We just want to have the dialogue. We have drug awareness, we have sexual discrimination, we have all kinds of stuff. It's okay to say, we recognize that there are a lot of people carrying extraordinary burdens and taking care of family members. We just want to let you know we're aware of it, and if there is an issue, we want you to know, feel free to come and talk to us about it. You start off with just having dialogue about it, just conversation. P, professional help. Anybody here familiar with EAP programs? EAP? I love the EAP. It's a great program, but it's kind of expensive for small businesses. So it's not very cost effective sometimes. If you have it, take advantage of it. I would really recommend it. Anybody not know what it is? EAP. EAP is a service that larger employers will contract with qualified mental health providers, service counseling and so forth. And the employees can go, I think, up to 6 visits for free, no charge to the employee. The employer picks up the tab to a contracted mental health provider. If they're having some kind of crisis, going through a divorce or caregiver or whatever else, surgery, just having a rough time. And then they will decide whether or not they need to transition into long-term care, psychiatric or counseling care and so forth, and then the employee can pay that as they go and they work it out. It's a great program. I've used it myself. I've been raised by a PACA therapist, and I'm going to wait for you on that one. So the EAP, though, is not very cost effective for smaller businesses. So what do you do? What can you do about that? Find a licensed mental health counselor, social worker, psychologist, even a psychiatrist that's maybe willing to, and just say, look, I want to make sure that if my employees, my business has a problem, anybody there has a problem, that they have a face that they can go to. They know somebody. We want to sit down and just build that relationship with you. Would you be willing to come and just spend 20 minutes at a meeting just to introduce yourself to you and talk about some of the things that you do? That's your role. And you've got to keep those healthy boundaries. And you're not, what happens is we end up enabling. Well, I'll cover your shift. How long? How many times you going to cover that shift? If it's a short-term thing, again, that's okay. But anybody want to cover my shift? I've been doing this a long time. I don't think anybody wants to cover my shift. Pardon? I don't get off duty.
Well, that's not shit.
Well, that's a lie. Exactly. So we can only be flexible for so long in that before we have to have good boundaries. Otherwise, the business will go downhill. And when you're dealing with a crisis like that, it's okay to pull together. But again, think about that group that wanted to take over taking meals at that lady's house and so forth. How long before a nice meal turns into, oh, we forgot it, we got to rush over there and do it, and we feel mad that we have to go over there in the rain or the snow, and the kids are waiting to eat, and how long before that happens? It will happen. Paul talked about this. He said we grow weary of doing good works. We got to be a little smart on this. And as we deal with these people that are going into this world of, and being a caregiver, by the way, usually, mine was a different case, usually it happens suddenly. With an injury, with a disease diagnosis or whatever else, there's not really training for it. All of a sudden you wake up and realize, you go home for Christmas or Thanksgiving, and you see that mom and dad are not doing too well. My dad was just diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. He's 80 years old. I have 4 brothers and sisters. I told them, you're on your own, I'm not doing it. I told that to mom and dad. I'd grow up. But it consumes you before you realize it. And if you think it doesn't affect your work, I want you to just brainstorm with me. Tim said I had to go around the table and do round table stuff, everybody write it down, but I'm not going to do that. Tim also said I had to do a PowerPoint. As you can see, I'm not a real PowerPoint kind of guy. I just kind of wander around and do my thing. But give me some ideas of how this affects the workplace. If you got somebody that's a caregiver, how does this affect the workplace? Just throw it out.
Becoming tired.
Get calls during work.
Becoming tired, exhausted.
And how does that affect the workplace?
The production is low.
All right, one more.
Lack of focus.
Lack of focus. Stress. Absentee. Jealousy. Resentment.
Oh, yeah, bitterness.
It doesn't take long before, that's why that fear, obligation, and guilt, obligation is a petri dish for resentment. And if you feel obligated to pull somebody else's weight, how long before that turns into resentment? And this is what happens. And it happens every day in the workforce. And you get, the human emotion gets all messed up with trying to figure out, well, I feel pity, and then people think I'm not a good Christian, or this or that. We let our emotions and bad theology get in the way of healthy boundaries. Healthy boundaries. Saying no is not necessarily a bad thing. And no is a complete sentence. And nobody has ever helped me by enabling me. And a lot of people have tried. And I've let them do it. But it always goes south. It always goes in disaster. I have to learn how to do this on my own. I can ask for help, but there are resources for help. But when it comes to this, and I tell every employee and every employer dealing with this, but particularly employees that are dealing with this, and I'll leave you with this, the 3 F's. You give a fair day's work. A fair day's work. Even if you have to work from home, you have to pull extra hours over the weekend and whatever you do it, you give a fair day's work. Why? Because you're putting deposits in the bank of goodwill. There'll be days when I do have to shortchange my coworkers, and I've had to do that in the past when I worked in corporate jobs and so forth. But I put in a fair day's work and then some so that I had a bank of goodwill. That's my responsibility as a caregiver. 2, be flexible and ask for flexibility. Be flexible. And then be forthright. Be forthright with your boss. Just or your coworkers, let them know this is what's going on, but this is what I'm doing to make up for this. I'm not going to shirk my responsibilities. And if you could just have that open dialogue, do you see how it changes the dynamic? Do you see how you can help folks without, how much money have we spent so far? None. But how much, you never know the preventive medicine, great moments in preventive medicine, you never know how much you are saved from something. But why wait until there's a crisis and then you're reacting? Let's respond and not react. All right. In the little bit of time we have left, do we have any questions? No math. It's okay, you can do some math. Any questions about this so far?
You talked about the people that have tried to help you. So what has helped you? Has somebody said, let me watch your wife for a day?
Perfect. This is how we help in the church situation. If they can't get to church, for example, let's work together and make sure that they have somebody to sit with them so that person can go to their own doctor. I go to doctors all the time, but 72% of caregivers don't see their own doctor regularly. Well, that's a time bomb. I go to doctors all the time, but not for me. I go for her. I've got to take time to go to my own doctor, and I'm very religious about that. I mean, I really am. My doctor puts eyeballs on me minimum of twice a year and does blood work and so forth twice a year. And because of the stress levels that I deal with and so forth. But I'm religious about that. But 72% of caregivers are not. That's a time bomb. And the other thing is, the way you help a caregiver is ask them how are you doing? And watch the response. If they start speaking in third person or first person plural, that's where they've lost that identity. Well, we just got home from the hospital. Or she's having a bad day. Or he's not doing too well. Or, our situation is this. I didn't ask. I had a guy there in Franklin, he's a physician, his wife was Parkinson's. I said, and he said, I miss playing golf with my buddies. I said, well, do you have the money to bring somebody in to help take care of her? He said, well, she's not comfortable with that. I said, I didn't ask. And he was stunned for a minute. I said, it's time to pry your hands off the wheelchair and get them on the golf club where they belong. But in order to do that, you got to have some logistics. And that's where the church can come into huge help because we can coordinate those things. Or you can possibly even underwrite a service if they need specialty care. It's not as expensive. You think just for a little bit of an hour, and what a great missions outreach. Or there's ways to do that. People can designate gifts to do stuff like that. You don't need to sit with that person necessarily. You may not be trained to do it. But somebody needs to do so. This person can go to church, go to the doctor, go to the grocery store, whatever else. And or just introduce them to the right group of people. So it's